All right. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Press the mic.
Have your thing on.
Press the thing.
Oh.
How about now? That's better. Wow. Awesome.
Hear me now?
I like that. Cool. Hey guys, how are we doing? Good? Awesome. All right. I first want to just thank everybody for coming to the panel. And the first thing I like to do before we get started is just sort of give an introduction. Everybody up here will have a chance to introduce ourselves. So I'll start with myself here. My name is Cole, or Simul is kind of the name I go by in the brony community. And I'm the vice chair for Everfree Northwest, which is a local 3-day My Little Pony fan convention. You'll find the flyers for those in your seats there. And I guess we'll just go down the line. So,
all right, my name is Alex. I'm also known as Chapter Pony in the fandom. I'm also a historian. I've been researching the history of fandoms and conventions for about the last 10 years now. I've also been involved in the fandom in many different roles, including helping run cons, found cons, and currently vending and selling artifact cons.
Hi guys, my name is Sam. Fan name is Cardoso Tradewind. I've been a theater member with Everfree Northwest for about 6 years now. That's it.
I'm Emily. I've had a few interesting contributions to the fandom. I used to make pony suits for both Everfree Northwest and people who privately commissioned me. I've been in the theater with Everfree Northwest one time because I never brought that character back. And I've also ended up on a couple of TV segments representing both our convention and our fandom, as well as made myself infamous for a certain something.
Pink Nightmare.
It's the Pink Nightmare.
I'm Eric, also known as Ethereal Vision. I worked with Everfree for 5 years in HR. Retired, I guess, anyway. General fan at this point. Don't really do anything else within the community at the moment.
Yeah, my name's Curtis. I kind of fell into this fandom by accident, found it was an amazing community. To the point that I ended up wanting to serve at Everfree for 3 years, I guess, as events director and then as chair. And now I'm just kind of hanging out on the executive board. And Simul over there is taking over a lot of that stuff. Is doing an excellent job. So, there for years.
all right. And we did have one more panelist. She's not here right now. She might show up a bit later. Yeah. We'll yell at her. But her name is Harmony Strings, and she's a cosplayer that you might recognize from Everfree and from some other local conventions. All right, so next slide, please. I just wanted to talk very quickly about what to expect with this panel. This panel, the goal here is not so much to focus on the show itself. We're not going to analyze the characters or the storyline or anything like that. The focus I'd really like to have for this panel is more on the fandom itself and the community that is formed around the show due to its rather unique position in society and its lasting impact. So a few of the things we're going to be discussing, like I said, is going to be all community oriented. It will be nostalgic. So here's a quick question. Who got into MLP in 2011? Anyone here from there? That era? Yeah? 2012. 2013. 2014, 2015, 2016, yeah? Yeah! 2017, new fans? That's awesome. So we have a big range of representation here. People are still getting into this show.
I would like to note that you did not ask about anybody who had been into the show since the 80s.
Yeah! How rude of me. My apologies.
It's not a bad show, it's a different show.
It is a different show. Very cool. So we're going to talk a bit about the history of the fandom. We're going to kind of go over its place within society. It's going to be real nostalgic. I'm trying to keep this open-ended. I deliberately designed this panel with not a huge amount of structure because I kind of prefer it when we can have more of an open discussion here. And so I also want to point out that, like, you know, there's those of us up here on stage, but we're just fans like you guys are. And so we all have our own unique stories and anecdotes from the fandom and how it's affected our lives. And later on in the panel, we encourage you guys to share any stories you might have as well. I think that microphone might work. I don't know. Yeah? Awesome. Thank you. Cool. So that you can expect as well. Everything is subjective, right? So because we're up here, we do have our own opinions about how the fandom works and operates. You don't have to agree with us 100%. And that's what's great about a community like this, is there's a lot of diversity in people's experiences in the fandom. And lastly, it is going to be a lot of fun. That is the main focus of this panel. And yeah, just again, thank you guys for coming. It looks like we're going to have a lot of fun. So next slide, please. The very first thing we're going to talk about, I'm going to invite Chocolate Pony up here. And if you want, you can use this fancy podium if it makes you feel special. Oh, you got it. I can do your slides. I don't know. What do you want to do from there? Okay, let's do it. All right, and he's going to talk about the history of the Brony fandom, featuring a slideshow originally made for a panel at BronyCon 2018.
So if any of you guys have been to any of my panels at previous cons, you know I could go on for like 2 hours talking about the history of things, but I think Simul wants me to keep this to about 10 minutes, so I'm going to quickly go through the history of the Brony fandom. Next slide, please. But before we begin, a little bit into the psychology of the current fans known as the Bronies. I studied psychology at Johns Hopkins University. I studied under neurosurgeon Dr. Ben Carson, and during that time I kind of picked up how people like to think, and nostalgia played a very, very big role into the creation of my the current Gen 4 My Little Pony and the fan base. Specifically, I want to start with the person in the middle, Lauren Faust. She was a big fan of Gen 1, the original My Little Pony from the 80s. She grew up playing with her toys. She did not like that the toys she was playing with were kind of the movies that they made to promote the toys were kind of girly. She was like, hey, my ponies are actually more fun. They're action-packed. They like doing going on adventures. And this kind of inspired her when she eventually was brought on by Hasbro to reboot My Little Pony to actually create a more action-oriented show. But this period that she became involved in was known as the Animation Renaissance. Now, if you guys know, in the 90s, there was a period called the Animation Renaissance, which preceded a period known as the Animation Dark Ages. The 80s, the Animation Dark Ages, you might remember from with shows like He-Man, very, very choppy, bland cartoons. Basically, cartoons found animation and cartoons found a way to be made cheaper and were made more for commercial gain to sell toys and sell products. So that period where we kind of saw a dip in animation, the quality of animation, the new creative shows. Now this changed when John Kay, a fan of the golden age of animation, wanted to go back to that old Looney Tunes, Walt Disney style of animation, and he created a show known as Ren and Snippy, which basically started what we know as the Animation Renaissance. Basically, during that time, Cartoon Network, Nickelodeon, and Toon Disney were producing a lot more creative shows with a lot more creative art styles, more fluid, with specific creator backing driving these shows. This also coincided around the same time with what's known as the Disney Renaissance. Now, most bronies who ended up liking the show grew up during this period. This was their childhood, the Animation Renaissance. Now, after the Animation Renaissance kind of came towards an end, the year I specifically marked the end of the Animation Renaissance and the start of the Animation Recession is 2005, because that's when Johnny Test and Family Guy got started, and Family Guy Reboot got started, and American Dad got started. But one thing I do want to state that was a difference is we kind of saw most studios moving to make cheaper animation using flash animation. So basically what you saw with the 80s with the Animation Dark Ages, you kind of saw with the Animation Recession. A lot more shows made cheaply, made crude, and more focused on trying to sell and market new properties as opposed to trying to make original creator-owned properties. And then, I think next slide, was when Lauren Faust was asked by Hasbro to reboot My Little Pony in 2010. Same year, Adventure Time came out, and that started what's now known as the Animation Revival. A period where we went back to creating new original creative cartoons, unique art styles, more vivid, more fluid in the animation schemes, as opposed even with flash animation, trying to make it look like traditional animation. And this leads to the first period of the brony fandom. And of course, these two shows, Adventure Time and My Little Pony, eventually gave way to the animation revival scene, which will include more shows driven with strong female protagonists, more female-centric shows, more progressive-looking shows, like Steven Universe, Legend of Korra, Gravity Falls, regular shows. All this stuff came about from what Lauren Faust and Adventure Time started. The first period I would like to call kind of like the wilderness age of the My Little Pony fandom. This was when a blogger saw that My Little Pony was being rebooted. Before the show even came out, he was criticizing the show My Little Pony. It's like, hey, this is the end of creator-driven content, and I guess he never saw Family Guy, because I think that was probably the end of that. But anyways, he was kind of very, very critical with Lauren Faust's new Girly Pony show before it even came out. So a lot of old fans of Lauren Faust, because if you guys don't know, Lauren Faust worked on shows like Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends and Powerpuff Girls, were like, hey, it's no fair that this guy's already critical of Lauren Faust's show before it came out. So a lot of fans on 4chan started saying, let's help promote Lauren Faust's show, let's help promote this My Little Pony show, and a lot of millennials started watching My Little Pony, and here's where something happened. Now, most people who grew up during the animation renaissance, where Lauren Faust was a big figure in their childhood, they're now either graduating high school, entering college, or leaving college. This was a period during the recession. Housing market crashed, the job market was horrible, people were inheriting a lot of student loans, a lot of debt for jobs that are going to be obsolete in a few years. So more or less, the millennial generation was in a kind of a state of depression. It was not a good scene. Rent was high, student tuition was high, it was not a scene they liked. So when they saw someone who worked on a show from their childhood, all of a sudden doing a new show, it kind of gave them that sense of nostalgia, saying, oh wow, this kind of reminds me of when I was happy during my childhood. Let's kind of look into this. And all of a sudden overnight, you've seen a new creative community boomed around My Little Pony. People who were previously depressed or down on their luck, all of a sudden found a new creative outlet for creating new art, new music, new writing, new cosplay, and that all came about because of My Little Pony. Now, I like to divide the different eras of the fandom based on which group and person was kind of in charge of it, and during this period, a news site called Equestria Daily would gather daily pony news together. And so the de facto leader of this period was Sophisto, who founded Equestria Daily and what came about. And you can see, during this period, most of the fan art and fan work was more dedicated towards trying to deconstruct the girly or childish notion of My Little Pony with more grim, gritty stuff. So you saw deconstructions that tried to make the childish pony look more adult, like Max Gilardi's Apple Dot Move series with Jackalack. You saw them try to move towards more grim works like Fall of Equestria, or more towards deconstruction works. And this was a period because the My Little Pony fandom was more active online. Meetups, small meetups were getting started, and eventually Purple Tinker founded the first pony convention, but it was essentially a large meetup. Most of the fan base was constricted online. Therefore, the online writers and online artists were considered the big horse famous people of this period. So this was the period where Equestria Daily was kind of the center of the fandom, and the people who were respected in the fandom were the artists and the writers. All right, next slide. So after the fandom started breaking waves, there was a period where the public started backlashing it. Right-wing media sources were saying, oh, it's demasculizing men by making them like this little girly show, while more left-wing media sources are like, oh, they're appropriating a show that's meant for young girls. So everyone was just hating on bronies for some reason, yet bronies were giving motivation for people.
Reliable.
Yeah, but it was strange because a lot of people in the military, a lot of veterans were also catching on to ponies. It was giving them a sense of happiness when they were stationed overseas or dealing with PTSD after their service. Now, this was also a time when different groups tried to move in and capitalize on the fandom. So Sophisto kind of fell into the role of being in charge of the fandom, but now everyone's like, oh, let's create our own news site so we could try to get a piece of the puzzle. So you started seeing news sites like Derby Hooves News trying to be alternatives to Equestria Daily, And this was also a period where podcasting became big. Chef Sandy and Apple Cider created the first brony podcast known as Brony Bill Live, and around the same time, Dusty Cat created his Stay, I think, Brony. So everyone was trying to find new outlets. And now with the creation of new media networks, you have an outlet for music and podcasting. One person who specifically wanted to dedicate money to create his own media outlet was a guy in the fandom known as Final Draft. He created what's known as Everfree Network as a way to try to upstage Equestria Daily. And Everfree Network now becomes the de facto leader of this period, but it was more of an artificial creation as opposed to organic, like with the first period. Now, because the main group centers of the fandoms around this time were media networks and radio groups like Celestia Radio and Ponyville Live and Everfree Network, that means that the podcasters became the big horse famous people of this period. So you had podcasters like Chef Sandy, Apple Cider, the Pegasus Sisters, and Dusty Cat becoming very, very big names in the fandom. But like we were saying, people were also trying to capitalize on the fandom. So you started seeing a boom of pony conventions. Almost every single major metropolitan area had like 2 or 3 pony conventions. At this period, there were more pony conventions in the United States than Star Trek conventions, Steven Universe conventions, Harry Potter conventions, and Twilight conventions combined. That's how crazy the convention scene was for My Little Pony. And people were trying to make money out of it. So of course you had something called Las Pegasus Unicon, which was a con that a lot of people lost money. Now what's good about Las Pegasus Unicon was it could have been the end of the fandom, but all the different fighting groups, Equestria Daily and Everfree Network, all united to raise money to help the guests who were invited to the con and kind of save the ship from sinking. But what happened after Unicon happened was the pony fandom had to look at ourselves and said, hey, we're creating too many cons, too many inexperienced people are running conventions, we need to have more experienced con organizers. So the pony fandom started narrowing down the number of cons they were doing, more experienced con groups were formed, and a new department was created, a department called VIP Relations, also abbreviated as VIPR. So the pony convention scene created the VIP or guest relations department. And that also became an inspiration for furry cons, anime cons, and comic cons to now start moving in that direction of having a dedicated guest relations department. So that's kind of the little thing that the pony convention scene imparted on the entire convention scene as a whole. Okay, next slide. All right, so afterwards, so as I said, a guy named Final Draft created Everfree Network, and he started trying to control the entire pony fandom. One of the main things he did was at this time when BronyCon was, and a lot of different cons were having panels like this, they usually do a live stream of the panels, so fans all around the world could watch the panel as well. Final Draft made it so that Everfree Network was the main streamer at BronyCon, and he kind of kicked out all the other groups from streaming the panels at BronyCon. But once BronyCon was like, you know what, we actually don't need you, we have our own in-house streamers, that's when Final Draft kind of fell to the wayside. Everfree Network eventually closed, and the last pieces of their group, which was a convention in Minnesota called MSP, ended. And at that point, BronyCon now became the central head of the fandom, specifically the Lunar Soulless organized BronyCon. The Dirt Incarnation of BronyCon, run by Josh Dean, became the central point of the fandom, the gathering point of the fandom. This was the period where BronyCon also broke 10K in attendance. This is impressive because furry cons have been going on for 20 years at this point, and no furry con up until last year broke 10K in attendance, so the Brony fandom broke that first. Now, because the conventions were the center of the fandom, the people who were invited to the conventions as the bigwigs all of a sudden became the de facto horse famous people. That meant the musicians, because every single big fandom convention in the pony fandom now had to have a dedicated concert track. So Everfree, BabsCon, Ponyville, Satterfest, BronyCon, they all had their own dedicated musicians concert track. And they had a bunch of musicians come. That's when the musicians now became like kind of the horse famous people as well in the fandom. And that's when the term horse famous was coined, yes, where you could be famous within a fandom. You could be the big fish in the small pond mentality. Why would I want to be a brain surgery, and where there's a lot of brain surgeons, and they're making fun of me because I don't do that well in brain surgery when I could be a famous artist in the fandom, you know? That's where everyone was trying to move and be the big fish in the small pond mentality. And this is also where M.A. Larson kind of took over as the head of the show, and he gave Twilight wings, which caused some controversy as well. We're not going to get into that. And that's also where more brony analysis started coming up.
All right, speed round for the last.
Speed round, last round. All right.
Last slide.
So this moves into the modern phase of the fandom.
Oops.
Yeah.
Oh, it like clicked. There we go.
Modern phase of fandom. So after BronyCon went from 10,000, all of a sudden jumped down to 5,000. So it basically halved its attendance. BronyCon all of a sudden now lost being the central part of the fandom, and the fandom started migrating back online. There was the fear that the fandom was ending, so most people stopped going to a lot of cons and the fandom moved back to being centralized online. So during this period, the first famous people became the brony analysis, the YouTubers and the brony reviewers, because they created content online through YouTube. And so this was happening. This was also a time where drama took place. So everyone liked drama.
Oh yeah, that one time.
So that means,
Time it happened ever.
so unlike the other periods, the de facto group that was kind of in charge of this period is Horse News, because that's, and similar groups like that, where they would collect and report on drama. We don't need to get into any of this drama. But yes, this marked a new phase where the My Little Pony movie came out. We were finally adjusting to Equestria Girls show. And then we heard, oh, season 9 is going to be the last season. And then they're going to do Gen 5. What's going to happen next? We'll see.
We'll see.
That ends the presentation portion of my panel. If you guys are interested in brony history, I do have flyers for my convention history book where bronies make a big chapter in the book.
Yes.
All right.
He is writing a book about fandom history, which is pretty cool. All right, thank you, Chaco. No, I'll sit here for now because we have the spot, and I don't have to stand that way. All right, so that's some of the background of the fandom as a whole, and for those of us that have been a part of it for a while, I'm sure a lot of that might be familiar to us. For those that have kind of joined more recently, maybe you aren't too familiar with that, and I have to say, to a certain extent, that can sometimes make you lucky, right? Like we did mention, there is a lot of drama involved in that, but what's interesting to me is that for every person who's been into this show, their experience has been different and unique. There's a lot of people that aren't involved in a lot of the online community. So what I'd like to do now for this next segment is kind of give all of us a chance to kind of share our own background and how we got into the fandom. And how it's kind of impacted our lives. So to start that off, I just like to ask a question, because this is something that I want to know if anyone else has had a similar experience to this. Was there anyone here in the audience who, at the time when they first got into My Little Pony, they were a minor, but have now since become adults? Anyone in here? Quite a few, right? And I think some of us agree, right?
14.
Yeah, there you go. And isn't that so interesting? I personally for me, I feel that entering the fandom and becoming part of the community came at a very interesting time in my life, because it was around the same time I was coming of age, right? And so at the time when you're kind of learning to be an adult and what that means and how to operate in the larger world, you also have this really kind of strange thing going on where you're breaking into a community that is quite different from society at large. Is there anyone up here at the table that can relate to that at all? Or any? Yeah? Anyone can chime in at this point. It's an open discussion, right? Or just if anyone would like to share how they got into the fandom.
Sure. So, yeah, it was between season 1 and season 2, basically. I had heard it online. I thought it was a big joke. Go over watching My Little Pony. Lasted about a year. That's a very long time for internet jokes. Like, all right, I'll try. I like the movies. Try during lunchtime. And it was, things were like, I think I hate this. Maybe to watch one more episode to make sure. And,
Just one more.
yeah, and what ended up eventually, when I realized what I was liking about it was it's optimism. Like, at the time, I think also now even more so then, like, if you look at the talk media at the time, it's very, very dark. Like, I remember looking at I still look at E3 reels from that year. I feel like every video game was like, in a post-apocalyptic future when everything is brown.
That's
So-
what Fallout Equestria is for, though. Right?
Yes, so there's other stuff, but the point was, watching this, it's like, they're all trying to just be good. Like, there's no brooding anti-heroes, there's no, like, necessary darkness here. It's just, and they're very human in their struggles, or anthropomorphic, but they're trying to be good. And I think that was a needed thing because, you know, there is something good about kind of the more darker science fiction. It gives warnings like, you know, if we keep being mean and dumb, this is what the world can look like. It's really important to also keep in mind, here's what the world can look like if we really, you know, try and look out for each other. And that's what really brought me into it. I think that's why it's created a community. That's why I've wanted to stay with it and help out wherever I can.
For sure.
I think I want to jump. Is it working?
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just want to jump in with that. See, you know, they do a little bit of the darker stuff, but they also experimented a little bit in other areas. When I got into the show, it was the same thing. You know, oh, you need to watch this show. I know it's a little girl's show, but you know, give the first couple episodes a chance. If it's okay, if you think it's okay, go to like episode 5 or 6. I was like, okay. And then I was like, I don't know, I might not watch this. And then the moment that got me was Fluttershy. She's an evil enchantress.
Yes.
Does evil dances. And I sat back, oh no. I think I like this little girl's show. And then, you know, they keep doing stuff like that. That wasn't normal in cartoons at the time. They didn't slip in random dude voices into a very female character who's very shy. And they just kept doing stuff like that, and they kept playing with the animation. You know, some of them have kind of creepy faces every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, you know, that's what got me into the fandom, was that moment, hearing that voice, just going, okay, I like her the most. At that point, it changed a little bit. But that was what got me into the show. And, you know, I spread it off to my friends, and they kind of were like, oh, they did the same thing. I don't know, same thing I did. Again, Fluttershy moment for them. And, yeah, just ended up moving on into conventions and stuff, and found a flyer, and ended up meeting all these guys, actually.
Yeah.
Actually, I met one of my best friends early on, and ended up being his best man this last summer, having met at what was the concert? The Nightmare concert?
Elements
Yeah,
of
Elements of
Melody.
Melody.
Yeah.
We were just like, okay, it might be weird, let's go to this concert about My Little Pony music, I guess. And then one of my friends, we met him the first time, and 5 years later, we was at his wedding.
Yeah. We're able to make real connections through this kind of community. And, you know, it's interesting you say, you know, like, oh my gosh, I think I like this little girl show. But what a lot of people might not realize is that from this show's inception, this kind of community happening is no accident. From the beginning, when Lauren Faust was developing this iteration of the show, she specifically wanted to make something that was different from the children's shows of the day. And, you know, Chaco went a bit into that when he was talking about the background of animation at the time. One of the specific goals that she had in mind was, I want to make a show that parents can watch with their kids and not feel awkward or not feel weird watching this show. Because if you have seen some other kids shows, sometimes it's just so saccharine and so, like, yeah, exactly, thank you. It's just not, there's not enough content there really for an adult to get into it. But with this new, I say new, but you know, we're coming to the end of G4. With this iteration, it was something different because it provided the kind of content that adults can really latch onto and find depth in. And I think that's been a big catalyst for a lot of people when they got into the show, was watching this and realizing, like, this is actually, you know, there's meaning in this.
Substantial.
Yeah, there's actual meaning in this, and there's real emotion. You know, there's another really kind of terrible thing in a lot of kids' media, which is that we shouldn't show real emotion. You know, we shouldn't show suffering or loss or death or anything like this. And, you know, I think there's times for that, maybe if it's for like the really young kids perhaps, but, you know, emotion isn't a bad thing to feel. And I think this show has been valuable in that it's told people, yes, it's okay to have these feelings. Did you want to add to that?
So my particular path through this fandom is a little bit different. It's the whole same thing of summer being like, oh, what's this show? It could be interesting. But at the time, I was, again, in a not very great place. I was not a very nice person. And I found the show, and I kept watching it, I kept watching it, I kept watching it. Oh, this is pretty good. But when I got into the show, it was a literal lifetime ago for me. That person that started watching the show no longer exists, quite literally. And for me, it was a very convenient shield because it allowed for an outlet to express emotions and be able to say, it's okay to have feelings, it's okay to be vulnerable. And at the same time, it was the girly setting, but at the same time, because there was that substance, because there was that, not underlying darkness, but underlying realism of the characters, that really allowed for me personally to have a passion that I haven't had in a long, long time. Of just dumping myself into the community, dumping myself into making costumes, making a fool out of myself, making all kinds of things. And I honestly kind of miss the passion that I had then. But it was an absolutely necessary journey for me personally to have a space and a people and a community where I could be vulnerable.
I think that's very valuable. Yeah, and I think a lot of people here would have similar experiences to that. Another thing I wanted to talk about is also just the fact that there is sort of a stepping stone moment for a lot of people when they personally get into the show, and then there's the moment when you realize that there's other people out there that are also into this. For me, I was the type of person where I saw these memes online, right? All these like random, what a novel concept. These, why are there colorful horses telling me jokes? Like, what is this? What, you know, and like a lot of this stuff started on 4chan and places like that. And for the longest time, I thought it was a joke. Like, I didn't realize that there even was a legitimate fandom around this show. I thought people were literally just posting pony memes as a joke because that's just how the internet works, you know? Random
because
stuff
we all
like that.
relate to memes.
Yeah.
We all relate to
We all relate to memes, exactly. Then, I didn't realize there was even a fandom until, a lot of you guys might know the website knowyourmeme.com. They did an episode on bronies. And that was the first time I heard the word brony. And I realized, like, wait a minute, is the, like, the chocolate cake stuff? Or like, no, not that. There's actual people that are into this show, not ironically.
So when I first heard brony, I thought the person was mispronouncing it and saying like brownie, like
Yeah.
little gremlins that climb into your mechanics and break stuff.
Gremlin ponies, oh dear.
Gremlin ponies.
Yeah. And so after that episode of Know Your Meme, when they did it, I felt like, okay, there must be something to this. Because I'd always been the type of person that, like, if there's a fandom around something, it must be there for a reason. I don't think these things happen by accident, and so I decided to check it out. And then you realize there really is this big community around it. And then I realized there's people that like this that, like, live in my town. What? And so I think a lot of us got involved with a group called Seattle Bronies. And for those of you that are local, is there anyone here familiar with the Seattle Bronies? Yeah, I do recognize a few people in here, so it's great to see you guys. Seattle Bronies was a meetup group on the site Meetup that actually let people get together and you sort of suggest an idea like, hey, let's all get lunch at the sushi place, or let's go ride the Ferris wheel, or let's take a hike in the park, or something like that. Yeah, exactly. And it became this thing where now, not only am I watching this show and enjoying it on a personal level, but I'm actually meeting new people because of it, and I'm making friends. And honestly, for me in my life, it's the type of thing where like I honestly have no clue where I would be or what I would be doing if I hadn't gotten involved in this fandom and in the local meetup group. I have no clue. I would literally know none of the people up here. There's no, well, no, you. I knew you before. Never mind. One exception. Just one. But, you know, the number of friends I've made through this, it's absolutely insane. Like, I have no clue where I would be in my life without this. I got into cons in general because of MLP. I wouldn't be going to Comic-Con either. Like, this was actually my first convention in Emerald City back in 2012, and the only reason I went was because Terra Strong was going, and there was a big Seattle meetup thing, and the Animaniacs guys, because they're awesome. But, you know, so personally for me, like, the fact that it's had that big of an impact on my life, it's something that, like, I just have no clue what would happen if it hadn't happened, and I'm just very glad that it did.
So speaking of meeting people at conventions, apparently I met like almost everyone here
Yeah.
at SoccerCon.
When you were...
And then no one knew it was me until like 2 years later. And they're like, that was you?
Well, some of the costumes you wear, like, do obscure your...
They do kind of obscure my everything.
Yes, yeah, for sure. To follow up with what Simul says on not sure where you'd be in your life, I can tell you that when I got into the fandom, I was in my middle of my undergrad, I was between majors, I had no idea what I was going to do, and then all of a sudden, Simul comes over and my best friend at the time, and they're like, hey, you gotta watch this show, and I'm like, cool, what's it called? And they're like, My Little Pony Friendship's Magic, and I'm like, you're insane. And they're like, no. Yes, but no. Just watch the show. And I'm like, all right, let's watch the pilot. And so I'm sitting there, and they're like on either side of me on the end of this couch, and they're like, what? Yeah. And they're like, look at it. Look at it. It's so great. And then at the end of it, they're like, don't you love it? And I was sitting there at the end of the pilot, it's like the credits are rolling, and I'm just thinking like, this is a complete waste of my time. And they were completely dejected. They were like, and then I went back to grad school the next day, and I had another friend who was like, okay, no, but seriously, the pilot's terrible. Watch this instead. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. It's the episode with Evil Enchantress Digital Dances. And I watched it, and I was like thinking, and then the Flutter Guy moment happened, and I was like, man, it's really funny. I don't know if this is it then. They're like, okay, who's your favorite out of the six? And I was like, I don't know, the probably Rarity. And they're like, cool. Watch Diamond Dogs. And then I watched Diamond Dogs, and then that first scene where she's like, oh, you want whining? This is whining! And then just it completely blows up. But it's because of that show and because of that love of it that I started going to conventions. And then, like Chaco said, when the fandom was just starting to have all of these conventions and all these meetups, a big thing that happened was, okay, well, who are you in Equestria, right? And so then I had to like sit down, I created an OC, and every pony has a cutie mark, and I was like, well, what would Cardoso have? And so I was thinking so long and hard about it, and then I just got out of a psychology class that day, and I was like, yeah, let's say it's an ink blot, and it was really good, and it was from that point on, I got into psychology, and that became my main. I'm serious. Like
I got a career path.
You know, actually, and that OC was like, you need go into this. Like that's not me, that's you. And it was, I don't know, like 3 years of grad school later, I'm gonna be a school counselor next year. And that's just insane to me.
Amazing. All right, so very quick.
So speaking of weird ways into the fandom, a lot of my friends who live out on the East Coast were not into the pony fandom at all. And they didn't care to watch any of the episodes, they didn't care to be led in that way. So instead I showed them the Pony Anthology.
Oh boy.
And literally the ponified version of Kanye West's whatever.
Power.
Yeah. It's like, okay, so here's the animation, here's the actual video, and they're like, what is this about?
I thought this was about horses.
I'm in and I love this.
Right. All right, so one last topic of discussion for us here, and then we're going to open the mic up in case anyone wants to share some anecdotes or ask any questions. The present and future of the fandom. So there's been a lot of discussion lately just because when you think about it, this show has been going for 9, coming on 10 years, something like that. Crazy. Like, I don't think a lot of us would have anticipated it to be running that long, but you know, a lot of people are worrying now that the show is ending, which has been confirmed. We do now know that season 9 is going to be the last season of Friendship is Magic. A lot of people are wondering, like, is all of this just going to go away? And people have different perspectives on that. I gotta say, I don't think so. You know, like, this is still a huge movement, and it's not going to disappear overnight. We do know things like BronyCon is ending. The last year of BronyCon is this one coming up here, 2019. But there are other cons that are still going. Everfree Northwest, we have no plans of closing anytime soon. But one thing that I wanted to say real quick, and then maybe we'll get some other perspectives and open up for questions, is because of where the fandom was in my life personally and the time I joined it in, I feel like most people I talk to that will say the fandom is dying, I have to ask them this question: is the fandom really dying, or are you just personally losing interest, right? And you know what, if that does happen, that's not a bad thing. I think it's good to appreciate these types of, like this fandom and all this community that has happened as it's a very unique moment in time that we can all cherish as a special part of our lives. And you know, there's a singer in a band that I like that said, you know, people talk about like, oh, I don't like your new music as good as your old music, but what it really boils down to is, you know, like I could put out the exact same album as like that first album years ago and you still wouldn't like it, because the reason that you're into that and you don't like the new stuff is specifically because it reminds you of where you were in your life at that time. And I think a lot of that same thing applies to this fandom. Ponies are always going to be important to me because it's going to remind me of all of you guys and all of this amazing stuff that's happened. Yeah, you guys are still here. That's the thing. Friendship is magic, right? Those friendships that has been made because of this aren't going to go away overnight. So many people have different perspectives on that, but I think that's really important to remember.
One thing I noticed with that whole move is it's not that the fandom's dying or anything. It's kind of simmering down a little bit, but everyone I know within the fandom, they moved on to other things, but we're also enjoying those things together.
Exactly.
Like the new DuckTales series, or you got My Hero Academia and all that stuff. Like all these, I'm not meeting new people through those. I met them through My Little Pony.
So
and
real quick, just so we can be efficient here. We are going to do open discussion Q&A next. If anyone has anything to share, it doesn't have to be a question. There's a microphone there if you guys want to line up. You're welcome to. You don't have to. Or we can just keep talking. But if you'd like to share, you're welcome to step up there.
For the first position.
Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah, don't be shy. Don't be shy.
Okay, good. It's on. I really liked how, I forgot your name. I'll just say Cardoso because that's I remember, I really liked how you talked about how you decided to be, you know, a psychologist or a counselor because of figuring out a cutie mark and doing all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say that I wasn't much of a drawer, and then I learned how to draw, and I wanted to draw, and when I really got into more serious, really hobby drawing was learning how to draw ponies.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things that I really wanted to do is anytime, so this was when Frozen came out. Anytime I saw pony art of Frozen, they always made her an alicorn, and it pissed me off because I was like, if she's an alicorn, having magic snow powers isn't a big deal. I was like, if she has a horn, this is stupid. The whole point of the movie is stupid if she's a horn. So I was like, I'm gonna learn how to draw ponies so I can draw Pegasus Elsa, and that's why I'm still drawing ponies to this day.
Awesome. I think that's super awesome that you mentioned that. One thing that is totally for sure that I have seen is that this fandom and that this show in general, it gave a lot of courage and a lot of strength to people that wanted to start drawing ponies because they didn't feel comfortable drawing anything else. And I feel like there's something really awesome about how there's a simplistic art style that Lauren Faust used to implement. And this has sort of been a jumping point where people were like, oh wait, no, I do actually like doing this. I can do something else. Oh, I can start doing that. Oh my gosh, I'm an artist. Spoiler, you were an artist the whole time. You just were trying to find where it was.
So,
I just did that thing where I blew your mind a little bit.
Also on the same note of creativity, the reason why I ended up getting into sewing at all, by the way, I've not been classically taught in sewing whatsoever, and despite that, I've still managed to turn out quite a bit of some of the better horse suits that are out there.
For real.
And it's still over there. It's in pieces. It's not my fault.
It's in a box.
It's in a box. They didn't know how to put it together without me. Anyways, I did not know how to sew at all. I had a sewing machine, and this was during the early stages of the My Little Pony fandom, 2012, 2013. I wanted a plushie really, really bad. But they're like $200. $300. I'm like, I don't got the money for that. And so I ended up buying a really, really crappy one off of eBay for $120. It's still really expensive. And I got in like, this is terrible. I can do something better than this. And 6 years later, I'm doing commission costumes for people.
Yeah.
Yay! Thanks,
Yeah.
ponies.
And I think a lot of people had that same thing happen, not just with art, but with music too. There's been a lot of musicians that are huge on YouTube now and like have started their own music career, and they started out doing like MLP fan stuff. So that's another good example.
Like living Tombstone.
Yeah,
like, he
Living
didn't
Tombstone,
do
right?
My Little Pony
That-
stuff anymore.
exactly.
Everything.
Great example. All right, Wyatt, what's up?
I was there since day one. When a new channel was coming, Fun Network, you know, and I saw that year I saw Toy Story 3, and I was kind of seeing a bit more adult cartoons, but I had no idea where my life would head. I honestly think a lot of where I am today can be pinpointed back to My Little Pony. I think I ended up a Green Lantern fan because you could pinpoint a lot of it back to My Little Pony.
Yeah.
Hell, I'm watching a future version of one of the steps in that nowadays. I'm sure you enjoyed it last week, these Supergirls. Anyway, I was there from day one, and I stayed ever since. Glimmer Gang Reform didn't get me out. Changeling Reformation didn't get me out. Discord Reformation didn't get me out. Twilight Corner Equestria Girls, I was okay with it.
You're a real veteran. For real. Awesome. Yeah.
I bet tons of you had I bet a lot of you had My Little Pony as a way for you to help grow up.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, and we see that too. Like the show's so old at this point that like they put in a puberty episode recently because yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
also there's
Yeah.
like a big thing of, you were saying initially that the theming of the show was very, very lighthearted, very, very optimistic. And you can actually watch it as the seasons progress. Yes, in the first like 2-3 seasons, there's not a pervasive antagonist at all. There's no brooding anti-heroes.
Yeah.
And that doesn't change, but the tone gets darker and darker
The
and
show
darker
grows up with the
as it
audience.
grows with its intended target demographic.
Exactly.
To the point where there's an entire episode in some of the newer series just dealing with social anxiety and not being able to speak.
And like I said,
With
the
the
puberty
Kurans.
episode too
Yeah.
as well, where like, you know, the original target demographic actually is coming of age now. And so again, yeah, they were able to use the show to grow up with the audience in a way that's very supportive. So I'm glad that can be. Thanks for the question, Wyatt. Yeah. All right, next up.
I'm Ricky from Portland.
Hi, Ricky from Portland.
I'm brand new into this, like less than a year.
Welcome.
And,
Welcome.
Started watching it as like it was kind of sarcastic at first, like, oh, check it out, and then I really started enjoying it. And a lot of people at my work, I get a lot of ridicule for it, but I honestly don't even care because I'm into Star Wars, all kinds of other fandoms and everything. But one thing that I've seen from this is it has opened up to like the most diverse group of people, the most
absolutely
just all the different fans that I see from this is just it's opened such a different world for me that I just thought it's absolutely amazing that I don't get from anything else. So I stand behind 100%. I absolutely love it. I love you guys, and I think it's awesome.
Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
it's the intended empathy of the design of the show.
Well, my first big immersion into the brony community was there was a big meetup that was posted on the Seattle meetups, but it was down in Portland. It was Brony Fest.
Brony Fest.
Yeah, Brony Fest. Northwest Brony Fest.
For gender.
And I know it didn't happen last year, but I went down there just thinking, hey, this would be fun. A reason to go down to Portland, why not? And I ended up meeting a bunch of people that I ended up staffing with at Everfree, and a bunch of them that I ended up becoming friends with. This guy, I didn't realize we would become best friends at that point because we were just joking around. Why would you do that to me?
Hey, I just wanted to add a little bit of my story. I'm another person who saw the internet memes and was like, okay, what is this really? Watched a couple of shows.
What is it really? What's the real thing happening?
Why?
Yeah.
I'll relate to memes.
So, but the thing is, I didn't actually get into the fandom from that. That got me to watch some episodes. I'm like, all right, this show is actually more, the characters subvert the caricatures that we would be expecting here. But what got me into the fandom actually was the music. The fandom episode, or the episode about, of course, blanking now, but this day is going to be perfect.
Yeah, This Day Aria.
This Day Aria. I heard that song, absolutely adored it, and said, I need to hear it more. And so I went on YouTube and found the official track and listened to it. And then found remixes, and then found more. There was so many remixes,
Yeah,
it was awesome.
for real.
I literally spent an entire afternoon just going through that. And then I branched off from that to, oh hey, I love this guy's music, let's hear more. The music of this fandom, as people said about the drawing, has been an amazing creative outlet and drew me into the fandom beyond just a show. And from there, staffing at Everfree and meeting so many friends. I had a similar experience. I was a groomsman at a friend's wedding, literally because of this show. Would not have met otherwise. So many great friends. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It was kind of weird, doesn't it? It's like, oh, we're best friends with people from My Little Pony?
Wow. Yes, hi.
Hi, I've come here all the way from Arkansas, so...
Welcome. Welcome!
I'm very excited to be here. I first got into the fandom when season 1 first came out, and I was kind of not okay at first, but then I got into it and I realized, hey, this is a really good show. But I was at that point in my life where I was like, I can't tell anyone. I have to be cool. I have to act cool so I can fit in. And so I didn't really tell anybody. And this was the time where I was switching schools. It was a really hard time for me. And I was having trouble finding friends. And I sat by this girl at lunch, who is now my girlfriend. And I had nothing in common with this girl. She was so quiet. And I said, hey, hi, how you doing? What do you like? And she said, oh, I like Transformers. I like all this kind of stuff. I didn't like that. So I was trying to figure out something you like. And then I saw her shirt. It was a My Little Pony shirt. And we just bonded over that. And over the next 2 years, we were together. And it was really great. And I never realized that there was such a great community. And I've just felt accepted ever since.
Thank you so much for sharing.
So within regards to what Chaco was saying earlier about the drama, even though there's a lot of drama, there's still a lot of acceptance going on.
Yeah.
And there's still a lot of welcoming. Like, I have not met a single person in the fandom that if someone new comes in, they're like, get out. I'm gonna gatekeep. Get out of here. Who's your favorite horse? No, you're not good. It's like, no, they're like, oh, welcome to the show. Come in.
It's far outweighs.
For real.
Yeah. There's some drama, but it's much more welcoming than it is hostile.
Yes.
And that was a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, for real.
No, seriously.
All right, so we are running a little bit low on time, so we're gonna try and keep things more condensed. But yeah, if you guys want to share, go ahead.
A question for the panel, actually. If
Sure.
the 5th generation takes off in the same way that the 4th generation has this time around, what would be the thing you would like the fandom to carry forward as we did this once, let's learn from our mistakes and not do that again?
There's a lot of examples, I think.
Don't have a central distribution.
Yeah, that helps.
Don't try to make a convention in Las Vegas.
Don't,
High Roller went well.
High Roller was
good,
well,
yeah.
but don't oversell your convention. Don't book all the talent in one spot.
Also, don't take yourself or really any of this too seriously. Because it really is just a way for people to have fun, and like any community, there's big egos, there's a lot of things that get in the way, but all of us at the end of the day are here for the same reason, and that's just because we like this show.
Yeah. Remember, we're all here to have fun.
Yeah, totally.
You're here to make people happy.
All right, go for it.
Hey, I'm Court Surge. I'm from the Okanagan, back up in Canada.
Awesome.
Right, North Cold. Question for you guys. What are your hopes for Generation 5?
That it contains a lot of the same positive messages of how to be honestly good people, how to look out for each other, and so it continues this community of friendship and support. That's mostly what I'm looking for.
Has good, relatable, complex characters that are actually a decent representation of the human condition.
Same line as better writing, honestly, like the last couple seasons. And
Yeah.
Let's tighten that writing down.
Good
And
scenario, right?
Yeah.
That needs some work.
writing needs a little bit of work. But keep the animation beautiful. You know, it's like it's been so gorgeous and getting better, but the writing never got much better.
I would say I would want our fandom just to accept it, and I know that's really hard, but
I don't like change.
I know change is scary, and I get that, right? But we all took such a great, courageous step to like come out of our comfort zones and embrace this show. And when that next generation of people come into Generation 5, I do not want us to be like, oh, well, Generation 4 was so much better, okay?
No, it's really about Generation 3.5.
No. I want us to be like, I'm so happy that you're getting the same amazing, positive, just joy that you're getting out of the show. Because I also got that same thing out of it. And let's march boldly together and just have a good time. That's what I want.
I like that. Thank you. Thank you. Hi.
Next.
I just wanted to say that when I first started watching the show, I didn't really know friendship was magic, and I have several friends in this room right now that are very dear to me and that I've only met through the pony fandom, and yeah, you up there, you're one of them. And I just want to say I love all you guys, and I'm really glad this fandom brought us together.
Yeah.
We're glad that you got here.
All right. Is it just the two left? Yeah. I think we can do it if we keep it quick. Let's do it.
Oh, okay. So when I first got into the fandom, I was very lightly into the fandom, and I had somebody convince me that Everfree theater troupe was fun. And I was like, okay, sure, let's try it. And I got cast as Fluttershy that first year, and I was like, if you know me, I am not Fluttershy. I am nothing like Fluttershy. But it was a lot of fun because I'm a cosplayer, so. But I met, again, so many people just like Heather, and it's just kind of opened doors that I didn't think were possible. And I keep coming back because I'm like, it's so much fun to be a part of it. And when you are dressed as a pony and a kid sees you, their eyes light up, and it's the best feeling ever. And so it's been such a positive experience, more than I thought, because I was nervous about getting into the community and the dark side of the brony. I was really nervous about it because I wasn't sure, and I haven't experienced that at all, knock on wood, that it's all been positive, so.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Thank you.
So minor note about the kids coming up and seeing the eyes of joy. That doesn't really have a very good impact on you when you can't see. It just turns into, you're not allowed to move for 20 minutes.
Yeah, walking through a convention in like a full pony like fursuit can be very slow going for sure. You need escorts if you're gonna do that.
Oh my gosh.
People to help you out.
It's not the same experience as you seeing with your eyes, because you don't see with your eyes.
No.
You see them like black and purple.
Hi there!
Hi. So I got into the pony fandom actually because of the children's TV show, and I was a nanny.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's annoying. Just watching the same thing. So now I'm raising my son to be in the fandom, and I love the cross cultures too with the Doctor Who's and all of this lovely stuff. But I've also come to this frustration for a culture that has a large brony population. There's not a lot of boy accessories and clothing and things
That's
like
true,
that.
yeah.
And it's
Still a problem.
crazy. Hot Topic.
Hot Topic will still get you that stuff. But yeah, you're right. And I think that's one of the other issues that the show was able to raise so well is like the fact that like we still have all these products that are way more gendered than they need to be.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I feel like lately it has been getting a little bit better. But you know, you still see the aisles in the like Target that are all pink, right? The pink aisle. But you know what's great is I think part of the show has led to more of an open discussion about that and how we don't necessarily need to keep reiterating like boys must like these things, girls must like these things. So that's always been a positive thing as well. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And it's cool, like that's a neat perspective, being a nanny and getting into that way. So thanks for sharing. All right. So just to close off, I do want to thank everybody for coming. one more slide here. If you do not know about Everfree Northwest, first of all, who has been to Everfree Northwest in the past? A lot of you guys. If you're not, if you have no clue what it is, there are flyers on the table here. Everfree Northwest is a 3-day My Little Pony fan convention that is locally owned and operated, run by volunteers that really pour their souls into their work to make a really great family-friendly event for fans of all ages. And this year is going to be our 8th year running, if you can believe that. So please, if you've not checked out Everfree before, we do encourage you to check it out. The website, everfreenw.com, is right there. If you do have younger kids 12 and under do get in free. It's an awesome time, and I've met a bunch of fantastic people solely because of Everfree, including some of the guys up here. So definitely check that out. And with that, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I hope you guys had a good time. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Comic-Con.
Thanks for coming, guys. See you at Everfree Northwest.
I'd like to go for Everfree, not only do kids are 12 getting free, but there's an entire room with dedicated programming just for kids. We've got dedicated VIP events. Like, there's a lot of great stuff for the entire family.